Ladies and gentlemen, the time being 12 o'clock, we'll commence the council meeting of the 29th of May 2017. The council meeting of the 26th of June 2017. And we'll commence with the open forum. I draw attention to the guidelines, which are on page 3 of the agenda. I'd also again indicate that we are recording the meeting, and the recording of the meeting will be placed on the council's website and Facebook after the meeting is completed. And will be available for the community. In respect of the open forum, I'd remind everyone that you are subject to no privilege. There is no privilege, so that it's not like the Parliament. Anything you say needs to keep in mind that others, if you talk about individuals, have the same legal rights in respect to defamation as they have in a public place. So I'll just go through and just go through the list here, and we'll call them one at a time. I've got the first person I've got is Betty Brown in respect to the Burke Street roundabout. Betty, if you'd like to come up to the microphone, thank you so much.
Hi, my name's Betty Brown. I'd like to bring to the attention of the roundabout in Burke Parker Street. It's absolutely appalling. It's been like it for well over 12 months it was broken, and I'd like to know when they're going to repair it. Because I know it happened here, just more of the same thing, and they had theirs repaired in 1 week. And I think it makes the town look very grotty and untidy. Thank you.
Betty, do you know Adam Street?
Adam.
You said Burke Street.
Sorry, Adam. Sorry. Yeah,
Adam
Parker.
Street.
Yeah, the roundabout
Okay.
up near the Kuta Hotel.
Okay.
Yep.
Thank you for that. Jim Slattery.
Thank you. Through the chair, touch on what Betty Brown just said about that roundabout. It's been like it well and truly over 12 months. There's 3 lights in that, 3 sets of lights. One's working, one's out, and two are flickering. So that needs attention. The other thing is, I'm concerned about and disappointed that council early last year put in for a grant to do solar lights at the back of the swimming pool and the exercise yard. I'm led to believe them solar panels arrived in Cootamundra in August this year. I'm just wondering when are they going to be put into place.
All right, Jim, I'm not obviously not aware of that, but we'll follow up on it and I'll get back to you.
Another thing is the school crossings, the 6 school pedestrian crossings in town. The paint's wearing out very, very thin on them. And also, presumably, we still have a road safety officer.
Do we? Yes,
I think we do.
Yeah. Okay.
To bring it to her attention about when you step off the footpath onto the roadway, look left, look right.
Sure.
They're all fading too.
Yes, I did. I actually noticed that walking around the weekend.
That's what I got.
Thank you very much, Jim. Lee Bowden.
Good afternoon. I looked at the budget, the draft operational budget online, and on the web page, and 48% of the council's income comes from rates, another 22% comes from charges, but there's 22% that comes from grants and contributions. So then looking through the draft budget for the next 4 years, some columns had monies for each year for the next 4 years. For example, the regional roadblock grant, there was money every year. But then in local rural roads, the federal heavy vehicle safety and production grant, there was nothing. So my question is, in terms of grants, the financial assistance grant, that's untied and it comes in every year. So that gives a good proportion of that grant money. However, I presume all the grants listed in the budget that didn't have any monies beside them were because those grants had to be applied for. And Jim just mentioned a grant for solar panels. So I'm just wondering, is there somebody on council, a staff member, tasked to look at grants? And the reason I ask this is that I have worked with council staff this year and have been successful in securing 3 grants. One was the Healing Foundation, a micro grant for the commemoration of the 20th anniversary of the Bring Them Home report. The other 2 were for NAIDOC celebrations from the Prime Minister and Cabinet's Department, and for Aboriginal Affairs. We were successful in securing those, and those events still have to happen. I'm in the middle of acquitting the Healing Foundation grant at the moment. But looking, all of the community consultations and listening sessions have been done, and the strategic plan will come out, and presumably there will be things in that strategic plan that haven't been considered in the draft budget, the projected budget. So I'm just wondering, is there somebody on council that looks for grants? One thing I'm aware of at the moment is that the Regional Arts New South Wales grants are now open, and there's a grants there for 20,000. So extra things that we could do in the community. And I'd like to say, I realise it's not just the council. If there's been a line that says, could council do such and such? No, it's not in the budget. And so the onus is on members of the community too to seek funding and grants. But the council has been wonderful working with me and the Aboriginal community in getting the NAIDOC grant. So it's just point of clarification about grants, and is there someone on council that looks for grants? Thank you.
Thank you, Lee. I've actually spoken to the General Manager in the last week or so in respect of the whole issue of grants, and there are certainly significant opportunities moving forward in accessing various grants. It's about being shovel ready, so that you actually have all of your strategic planning in place. And to that end, we have discussed where other councils have in fact engaged people either on a success fee or some other mechanism. So it doesn't always have to be somebody working permanently within the council, but that's certainly on the agenda, and I thank you for your input on that. Rosalind? Oh, sorry. That's all right. Did you say Rosalind? Yes, I did. Making notes.
Not only old, but deaf. So I just wanted to talk about the first up for the about the Arts Centre. I understand that they've asked for money.
Yes, it's in the agenda there.
Well,
So, do you want me to respond as to?
oh no, don't worry.
Okay, all right.
I'll just tell you
All right,
because
you tell
I've been on the Art Council Arts Centres Committee for a year, and I've chaired the last 6 months of the meetings.
All right.
So one of the things I have and the former council have tried to do was to get a business plan out of them. This has not been forthcoming. So I've tried very hard to encourage them to try and make a better, have a bread and butter line, because essentially it is relying totally on the taxpayer for almost its existence, and of course the money that the council still gives it.
Of course.
So why don't we open it up for a conference centre, have weddings there, actually sell artefacts or art, works of art there. So in other words, try and pull your finger out and do like other people do, the RDA, the footy, all try and get out there and raise money themselves. And don't continually blood from the taxpayers and the residents. There are plenty of other people in this community that also would like money from the council. It is not just the art centre. So I resigned 2 weeks ago. That's it. So, and good luck with anybody trying to alter this. This has not gone on for 5 minutes. It's gone on for almost a decade. So without a business plan, I don't think you're a viable, credible business in this community when you ask for other people's money. So the peer review, I understand when you first had the meeting with us over in Gundagai and said you were asking for this peer review, everybody, I'm sure most people accepted that it was a necessary thing because it wasn't clear, or maybe it was very clear, that things weren't going particularly well in various directions. So my expectation, and this could be deeply flawed, was that it would spell out, particularly regarding Cootamundra, where the mistakes had been made, or we could see why it is, and after all, we were in this room a week ago, and you did say that because things weren't going exactly according to plan, that you were held up by that, and I accept that. However, in this review, it goes on to say, well, you know, the staff are finding that's fine, everything's going well. And if that were true, why have we got so many people that you've had to re-employ? And I understand why you've done it, but you can't have your cake and eat it. I don't think it's fair to say things were going particularly well with the staff meetings. Well, and if they were, well, it's a little bit duplicitous. When they've got an organisational, cultural section there and all staff meetings held have helped the majority to recognise that we are making good progress. Well, I don't accept that because this time last week we weren't making particularly good progress. And I think right at the end of it, because it's no good going on and on through it, this is my perception. Sure. You asked us to read it.
Absolutely.
So I jolly well took it. Was very complicated. It is full of quite a lot of motherhood statements that, you know, we're a little bit over, oh, we strive for best practice. Oh, well, give me a break. We all strive for best practice. You know, we're trying to do that on the farm. So we don't need to be told we're all striving for best practice. But at the end, how will we know if you've reached your 10 key results that the government expects you to just before we start the council? Now, we're going to be shut off in, I don't know, 2 months or whatever. Mm-hmm. So how will the next lot, forming this new council, how will we be informed, how will we know that you did reach those 10 critical points right at the end of your review?
Ros, thank you for that. Some of the things that you've referred to in terms of indicating that things were going okay are actually quotes that Mr. Inglis has taken from reports provided by the previous administrator to the Premier and Cabinet. So
that wasn't made clear, and I fully accept that.
So my apologies if that wasn't clear. So really what it was saying is this is what Premier and Cabinet had been told, and then the report goes on to, with a degree of subtlety, and I understand that, to indicate that there are things that are really required to be done and done urgently, and that's what we're doing. In respect of the 10 key outcomes, it's my intention to provide a report that will go to the first meeting of the new council, indicating those things that we have achieved in terms of delivering an organisation to go forward with, those things that still haven't been achieved and what the new council will need to be looking to do. So I'm not I mean, it's my intention to, with best endeavours, to get there before September. Yes. And just reflecting on I think 12 weeks, we've new administrator and a new interim general manager. We've undertaken the peer review. But we are dealing with a number of these issues that are in the peer review. And just to make it clear, as soon as the peer review arrived, I had a quick read of it and we sent it out as a late item. I have had no discussion with Mr. Inglis in relation to this report, so it's clearly because I wanted it to be seen as completely independent. So that's how I intend to. That's how I intend to do that. So thank you for that.
The last point being, he did point out, and I hope future councillors or prospective councillors will take note of that. This is not going to be a faint-hearted attempt at standing it. You'd want to be right across that. So these new, you're going to give some forums or information about new councillors. They'd better get into this, get right on board with this report, because that is going to be critical of how you're going to conduct yourself in the next 3 years, and that is not an easy document to quickly swallow. You're going to have to be trained to see how you're going to manage all that.
I agree completely. Thank you.
Right, yeah, thank you.
Trevor Glover. Thank you, Trevor.
Thank you, Stephen. Marianne, can I just move that around a little bit? Is that going to create a problem if I do that? Just see how we go. Okay. How, no, right. Okay, how's that? Great work. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you. My name's Trevor Glover. I'm a retired school teacher, live at Coolac. Stephen, and ladies and gentlemen of the committee, Stephen, it's in continuation of the transfer stations.
Yes.
I'm hoping that you received that one-page thoughts that I had that was at Coolac. You have?
Yes, I did. Yes, no, yeah, absolutely. But as I said at the last meeting, I had no intention of changing anything.
I'm sorry?
I said at the last meeting that I had no intention of changing anything in relation to...
No, at the moment, however...
that I was leaving that to the new council.
Right, but there's still a process in place.
Yes, indeed. Yep.
Otherwise, Greg Ewings wouldn't have been going around to all the
That's
transfer
right.
stations sort of
Exactly.
stating what he
so
stated.
yes, I have had a look at it.
Okay, all right, well, thank you for that. Just coming down onto the issue, when I spoke to Greg, ladies and gentlemen, I spoke to Greg on the phone just prior to the last Gundagai meeting, and we spoke about a number of things about the transfer stations at Tumbalong, Coolac, Muttama and Nangus. And one of the issues was the fact that keys seem to be easily got, and for example, the Tumbalong keys and the Nangus keys are identical. So anyone in either of those two communities can go to either of those transfer stations and dump their rubbish. So that creates a bit of an issue for me, because I know at Coolac the same issue is we have some people from Jugiong that I'm aware of that are using the Coolac transfer station. So when I spoke to Greg and we spoke about keys, he indicated that a possible scenario would be anywhere between $100 and $500 for a key. Now, I sort of took that in good faith until I started to work out some facts. If the other aspect, if I just come back, Stephen, I tried to find out how many rates went out for the Adjinbilly, Coolac, Gabarralong and Muttama area, and was told that I couldn't have that information originally because it had to go to another group of people, another committee. I didn't want names and I didn't want addresses. All I wanted was just numbers. So I'm not quite certain that process. However, I have received that there are about 406 people or possible rate notices that go out to Adjinbilly, Coolac, Gabarralong, and Coolac and Gabarralong are actually joined together on the website, and Muttama. Now, if we take 60% of those actually having the need for a key, that is, a farmer might have 3 or 4 blocks, so he might get 3 or 4 notices, but there's only the one house, so therefore there's only the one garbage bin, so to speak. But if we take that at 60%, that's $85,000 at $100 for the 856. That's 60% of the 1,428 notices that made up the $80,000 that was collected by council to run those transfer stations. So if we go to $300, that's $256,000 for a bloody key. I find that extraordinary. And Greg actually used the term $500, so I shudder at the thought. So my point being on this is that we need to be realistic about this, because no way would a set of keys come anywhere near $85,000 for a start, let alone $250,000. So that's one aspect that I think needs to be put there. Coming back to the Coolac station, because when I spoke to Greg, one of the issues for all the transfer stations is that they're continually full. You know, like we're in trouble because they are continually full. Well, with the 406 for the Adjunbilly, Coolac, Muttama area, if we take just 30% of those, just 30% of those people having a garbage bin, etc., that comes to 30 cubic metres of rubbish. Now, in the Muttama and the Coolac area, there's only less than 30 cubic metres of rubbish space. So the system was failed right from the start because of the facts. If we take 50%, it goes to 50 cubic metres. And if we go back to the 60%, which I think is a fair percentage of households that would have a garbage bin to use that, that comes to 61 cubic metres. And obviously the transfer stations just don't have enough space to carry that. And yet we've had Greg going around the countryside sort of saying that we need to buy 2 new trucks, and they're going to be side lift trucks, they're going to be a wheelie bin system, when in actual fact the transfer stations themselves were never catered for the amount of rubbish there. So, and as I've said to you, Stephen, and the issue is that it's quite simple just to add a few more skip bins and have that system working properly. The system isn't broken, it's just not quite there.
Trevor, can I chat with you after the meeting? We might actually sit down with Greg next week and just go through the detail and just so I can be clear about where he's up to as well as what your views are. I think it's probably worth us having actually a meeting with the General Manager and myself. And
I'd love that.
Okay.
Thank you very much for the offer.
Right. No,
I hope you're going to show me a bit of leniency with time too, please.
I think you're about 7 minutes now. So.
Yeah, look, all right. Very quickly, the proposed new service station at Coolac, that creates an issue for the amount of rubbish at the transfer station. I mean, a block of land's been sold. I've spoken to someone who has seen the
Trevor,
plans.
I'm not at all aware from a public point of view anything about a Coolac
Well, gee,
facility.
it's all the rage in Coolac, and I know the man that sold the block of land, and I've spoken to a man that's seen the plans for the service station, and indeed tenders are supposedly already being out for fast food stations there. So,
Okay.
no, you may not have received a DA, but the bottom line is people are going to great lengths to make certain that this is up and going. All right.
Okay.
So I have some issues there because the first issue is when the overpass came on the highway, there was a change in the water system, and in heavy rains down towards the Coolac shop, that creates that is a real issue. So we get a service station there. I'm just hoping the council are aware that there will be a need for maybe some drastic
Once we
storm
get,
water stuff.
If we get an application, obviously there's a process including community input and consultation, and we'd certainly be taking that seriously.
Okay, thank you. Just, yep.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, sorry. Look, I do apologise, sir. I do apologise.
So Trevor, how long have you got?
Look, I just wanted to...
I've got about four other people.
Yeah, no, I do understand. Just one last one. The new statue in Gundagai, some Gundagai people, is there going to be some information about Yarry and Jackie there? There is, because I was there the other day and I was looking at it and we had 4...
So the answer is yes.
Okay, that's fine.
Thank you, Trevor.
I do thank you for your time.
Michael Kingwell. Thank you, Michael.
Thank you. I will be brief. I've just got a couple of things. Just the document at hand, the peer report. It's got major projects program, and on that there's 900,000 there for the dog and the tucker box area. 500,000 of being a grant for a water supply. I've spoken about this before at different meetings about, well, I'd just like to put it out there for people to have a think about it, about taking that dog to town, because any money that we spend out there is detracting from the town.
You're trying to get me killed.
And the millions that have been spent on that main street was there to get people in the town, and I'd just like to put it out there for the people to have a think about it and have a bit of discussion on, at some stage, taking that dog to town. It probably should have been done when the highway bypassed the dog.
Jeez.
And that's just one. Just put it out there for people to have a think. I hope the Gundagai Press is here. Put it in the Gundagai paper. And the other one is Gabarralong, Adjunbilly Hill. On the major projects there, it didn't even get a mention. I'd like it to be put on some sort of list there and be worked towards doing something. We don't need 100k an hour road up that hill. If we could just get it straightened so we could run B-doubles up and down it, this school bus goes up and down it every day, get it straightened, a bit of sight distance, and if we could run B-doubles up and down, it would have a great economic value for the ratepayers in the Shire.
Right, thanks. I've made a note of that. The list is was really where the LAC and IAG, the advisory committees, had broadly discussed. We indicated that some of those things were things that, especially things like the trading funds, it was especially certainly sewer, whether or not that was likely to be something that was going to in fact be able to be achieved by putting funds towards it, because there are a whole lot of other things that we have no control over. But I would refer you to the peer review document in relation to the water and sewer, to the sewer project at Gundagai. It certainly indicates that there's a whole lot of work that we have to do before we're likely to get any funding. Before we're going to be able to formally make application for funding from the state government. There is a program in the new state budget that we will be able to access, and I think at a previous IAG it indicated that I understood that was going to be the case, but until the budget came out, clearly you can't be certain. At this point in time, we're not in a position where we're able to make application for that, but that's going to affect that list. And between now and the 31st of next month, we will go out to some community consultation, probably just an ad in the paper to get people to indicate what their view are about some of those things. And the dog in the tucker box, water to that space, and I mean, some of those things are going to be influenced by what do we do into the future. And as previously indicated, I've got a couple of reports that are currently being prepared on what options there might be on the dog and tucker box site, and that will help the decision on that 9 million. So it's a little bit complicated at the moment, but I take on board what you're saying, and certainly it's consistent with the advice that I got from the community committee. Thank you. David? Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Just on this budget that's going to be delivered today, there's just a few things, and it goes on from the discussion we had last week when we were here. I would like someone within the organisation to put pressure on Maloney to get that report. I think it's absolutely disastrous that we're coming up with a 10 years operational plan that doesn't incorporate the Maloney report on the Cootamundra infrastructure. That's number one. Number two, I asked the question that I would appreciate, probably because of my accounting background, but I would appreciate a detailed movement in reserves, just not what happens from the balance from one year to the next, a detail so I can follow it through, because I don't know whether other people have noticed, but in the list that was provided, there are 4 externally restricted reserves and 4 internally restricted reserves that have no movement whatsoever in the next 4 years. They're all the same figure. No movement. There's no movement in employee leave. There's no movement in domestic waste management. So what are we doing with? And we're approving this budget. Well, that's what's being done today. So I think those things should be provided. The other thing that I'd just like to say is that, you know, we are approving a general fund budget today, or the administrator is, that shows that we've got operating result before losses of $33 million in the next 10 years. Now, I know in that budget there is $80,000 worth of depreciation, but my understanding is that depreciation should always be used for renewal expenditure to do new things, not to subsidise cash shortfalls. So, and our water and sewer budgets, we do have a positive operating result before grants, and that is after depreciation. So my question is, there's a lot of work to be done on our general fund to get it in order, because I hate to see where we're going to be in 10 years' time. It is really frightening from my point of view, and I'll leave it with you. Thank you.
Well, thank you, David. And a number of those issues are raised in the Inglis independent peer review, and they are certainly things that are going to be addressed by. We're going to be looking at some of those things before September, but there will be, in the final report I do for the new council, certainly I'll be drawing their attention to the independent review, because there are things in there that the new council is going to have to do into the future, because at this point, to be blunt, David's right, it's not sustainable, and it's going to have to be fixed. Rod Chalmers, thank you.
Good afternoon. First off, just like to welcome Alan. No one's done that yet. Hope everything goes well. I'd just like to just mention about the disability inclusion plan, that in the council building there is no ability for someone with a disability, a mobility disability, to get up to the council chambers. And it's something we've talked about at council for a fair while, and it really does need to be addressed. My other point is I'd like to bring up is the peer review, and I'd like to congratulate Mr. Inglis on an excellent, readable document. I'd like to recommend also everyone who's interested in council or what needs to be achieved by council over the next few months is to actually look at it. As a member of the IAG committee, it is distressing that over the last 18 months we have been led to believe by previous employees that we were online and tracking well. That obviously is an erroneous assertion, and that needs to be looked at. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Rod. The part of the documentation today actually does include some potential to deal with the access to upstairs of that building. Thank you all, and we're going to move now to the adoption of the May meetings, on 29th of May, the agenda, the minutes. So I'd move that they be adopted subject to, on 14/05/17, which is the last resolution of the minutes on page 38, subject to the resolution reading that the council provides delegated authority to the general manager to approve the purchase of second-hand loader semi-trailer under the Local Government Act. The council can only delegate to the general manager, not to a council staff member. So on that basis, I'll adopt the minutes as a true and accurate record of the meeting. Sorry, I'll do that next. Just got to find. Where's my paper on Welcome to Country? It's in the minutes. So the next thing I'm going to do is to do the Welcome to Country. Sorry. I'd like to acknowledge the Wiradjuri people, who are the traditional custodians of the land that we are meeting on today. I would also like to pay my respects to elders, both past and present, of the Wiradjuri Nation, and extend that respect to other Aboriginal people who are present today. I'd like to move that we accept the late items, which are the Inglis independent peer review, and also the funding announcement for kids who play sport from the state local member Katrina Hodgkinson. We'll deal with those at the end of the agenda. Okay. Move to the delegations to the General Manager. The resolution is on page 7. This brings the delegations in line with the regulations under the Local Government Act as amended last year. So I'll move that recommendation, and it's endorsed. Recommendation in relation to the Implementation Advisory Group and the Local Representative Committee. I think it's self-explanatory in relation to the fact that a number of the members have indicated they'll be standing for election, and on that basis I move the recommendation. So there will be one more meeting of that group as a combined group, where we'll again have a look at primarily the $9 million expenditure, but we're also going out to community consultation, as I've indicated. So I've moved that, and it's so endorsed. I haven't got a date for the meeting yet, to be honest, Ros. We're just actually going to do some planning on that this afternoon. It's got a link in with the public consultation, so we've had some of that before we come to that meeting. Just in terms of the process on those funds, it's a little bit complicated in that the major project that had originally been identified was the Gundagai sewer treatment plant. My understanding is that, and I've had a number of meetings with ministers even last week in respect to funding, is that the program of funding that is available is designed to provide full support for the funding the Gundagai sewer treatment plant. However, it's still subject to a process, and it's still subject to being considered, and there are certainly no guarantees. We currently have an application before Building Better Regions for, I think, $3 million towards that project. If we don't get that money under the previously identified process, we wouldn't have sufficient money to do the project, because we couldn't spend $5 million of the implementation fund on it, on the assumption we're going to get them, or $6 million on the assumption we're going to get money from the state government, and we've got $1 million in reserve. So the long and the short of it is that we may not be in a position to actually make a clear and firm decision in relation to expending money which is not tied from the state government on the Gundagai Sewer Treatment Plant, which is the $2.5 million out of the implementation fund. The other broad principle that worries me in terms of doing that is that having lived through the corporatisation of the electricity authorities, which were once, creatures of councils, we lost all those assets to the state government. Who's to say you put $2.5 million of this money into the sewer treatment plant, and in 3 to 5 years they're corporatised, the sewer treatment facilities across the state, and they disappear. And so you've spent $2.5 million of money that you could have spent improving the amenity to your community, and then as a trading fund you lose that. So I've got a few concerns about that particular thing. So what I'm looking to do is to set some principles around which we might make decisions about the $9 million, and they would include things like what the impact will be on what will the impact be in terms of intergenerational equity, a positive impact on asset management. That is, are we doing something that's going to improve our asset management or depreciation into the future? Improved economic and social development, so that the community gets a long-term benefit, and provides capacity for leveraging other funds. So if we can take $500,000 and get the state government to contribute, or the federal government to contribute something under a grants program, then we actually leverage those funds and get a better outcome from the community. And then to balance the utilisation of those funds against the cost benefit. And also, as I said, to avoid areas that might be corporatised into the future and we lose the benefit of those funds. So anyway, that's some discussion on that. I'm going to remove the recommendation on page 8, and it's so resolved. Variation of the ordinary council meeting times. In order to, because it's a little unusual to be changing a council meeting date, but we really need the full months to do the community consultation on the $9 million, and we're currently having a meeting on the 26th of June, so we're going to have the next meeting on the 31st of July, so that we'll have had time to undertake final community consultation on the $9 million, have the final meeting with the IAG and LRC, and then I then need to develop some recommendations to go to a committee of a member of Premier and Cabinet, regional member of Premier and Cabinet, the local member and myself, and then those three people then resolve what the $9 million odd is going to be spent on. Then that comes back to the council meeting to be ratified. So, and the thing about under the proclamation, that expenditure, once we resolve it, is locked in. So there's no capacity to rescind it or to change it. It has to be spent on those items. So I'll be looking to have a cascading list, so that if something doesn't happen because we don't get the other money, for example, sewer or something else, then it'll automatically cascade to the next project. So I'm moving that recommendation that we the July meeting of council be changed to the 31st of July 2017. It'll be at the Gundagai Council Chambers at 10 a.m. It's now so endorsed. The New South Wales Regional Growth Fund. It's been announced. It's in the tabled documents, and it's for noting, and it's so endorsed. The acknowledgement of the OAM recipients. In the agenda, there are a list of a number of achievements from from both of the individuals, Isabel Scott and Marcia Thornburn, and I've prepared a letter to go to both of those recipients as well. So the recommendation is that be noted. It's so resolved. The planning proposal for CGREG. Do we need to say anything about this? Okay. This is a planning proposal in respect of heavy industry zone, and I move the recommendation, and it's so endorsed. We're on page 15 for those who are following. This is in relation to the Section 94 contributions plan for Cootamundra. And my understanding is that there are no unspent funds in relation to this existing plan, and so as a consequence we're required to notify the intention to repeal the Section 94 contributions plan in order to allow us to then move to the development and adoption of a new Section 94 plan. Yeah. Do you want to, is that correct? Okay, sorry. So I'll move the recommendation, and it's so endorsed. That brings us to the development applications approved. That's for noting. It's on page 16. I'll move the recommendation. It's so endorsed. Disability inclusion plan. That's been referred to in the earlier presentations to the, or comments to the council, and I move that the plan be adopted in order to meet the legislative requirements under the Disability Inclusions Act 2014. It's so endorsed. The outdoor dining policy trial. Now, in respect to this, there are a few issues there, especially in relation to the draft identified charges associated with that. So on that basis, I'm going to move that council notes that this is version 1 of the draft statewide outdoor dining policy, which currently needs further review prior to its implementation. It is a draft. The council fees and charges for outdoor dining and other activities are set in the 2017-2018 operational plan and will not be increased throughout the 12-month trial period. And finally, council resolves to endorse the trial outdoor dining policy pilot in the chosen location, but reserves the right to opt out of the trial if the policy causes additional burdens on local business. The charge that has been identified in the draft policy probably is appropriate in a large regional centre or Sydney, but certainly not in this location. So that's my motion, and it's moved, and it's so endorsed. The draft economic development strategy. I had some long discussion in relation to the draft economic development strategy. It's really important that the merged organisation going forward has a draft economic development strategy. However, in terms of implementation and the implementation strategy, I've indicated to the staff that I think it's important to generate a higher degree of engagement with the business community in terms of how it might be implemented. It also needs to link into a more comprehensive tourism strategy, and as well as reflecting on the impact that arts and culture have in the development of communities. So on that basis, I'm moving that it be adopted as an interim strategy while we work on some more comprehensive elements and some action plans that can be owned by the industry sectors and driven by those industry sectors. So I'm moving that way, and it's resolved. The next item relates to the implementation fund and really sets out those things that we're required to do in responding to Premier and Cabinet's I suppose, support in ensuring we do deliver an effective organisation to the new council. There's a fair bit that we need to do between now and September, and we're well underway with that. But there's still a lot more to do post that time. So the recommendation's on page 24, and I move that recommendation, and it's so resolved. We now move to the draft operational plan. There were some questions that were raised by David Graham in respect of those, and they're things that I certainly will be pursuing in the next, between now probably the next meeting. It would be my intention to provide to the next meeting a list of the reserves and where they started and where they're currently at and where they will be into the future. In respect of, this operational plan is literally a one-year operational plan. So while there is a delivery program that sits behind it, we're still, it's a little bit kind of, I suppose, what I would consider cart before the horse, but under the proclamation, the only requirement of the merged entity is to deliver an operational plan and to develop a community strategic plan as a draft, which will then have a delivery program for consideration within the next 12 months of the newly elected council. So that the 4-year plan, and that was rightly picked up, there are some things there that are not in that, will be required to be developed by the new council more thoroughly in its first year. There are some comments there. The recommendation is on page 27, and the other thing about an operational plan and in fact the IPNR is that it's still a living document. There is still a capacity at the quarterly review, and the new council can do this to reflect on the plan and to make changes. And to be honest, the English report indicates that that's going to have to happen over the next 12 months of the new council in order to be sustainable into the future. I know I've got a couple of people wanting to make comments and ask questions. It's not the normal practice to do that. I'll just check.
Oh, well, it's not, Mr. Administrator, but I mean, no. Once you open it up, you open it up. But what you say is it's a living document and can be changed even by a resolution of council in the future. So there's nothing set in stone about it. It's a guide as to what we have to do to service the community, but it can be changed at any time by a resolution of council. And what the administrator says is definitely right. We cannot. It's not sustainable, that draft plan. And but we need to get to the bottom of our operations to see exactly where we can still deliver the same service but do it at a more economical cost. So.
All right, folks. So, David, do you still want to ask a question or make a comment? Okay. Jim, do you still want to make a comment or ask a question?
Yes, I'd like to go back on page 24 about the contribution to the Arts Centre.
Yeah, well, you've already raised that, Jim. So, did you want to? Oh, so just on that, I mean, my view about that is that, and I take up the point that Ros made earlier, that the instructions to the staff will be that there won't be any change in the quantum to the recommended 30,000 until we receive a 5-year business plan from the Arts Centre. So it's going to be performance based. I also want to see milestones in that budget so that we're quite clear in year one what we're getting in order to sustain that facility. The facts are that we have a facility there, and in my experience, that's not going to go away. That centre is going to be there. Now, what we do need to do is to be getting a very clear idea from the Arts Centre as to how the community can access and better access it over time. We need a very clear set of charges in relation to hiring of all the various elements that come with the centre, and we need some policy statements about its intent. But I think we're better to provide this level of funding for 12 months in order to secure a very clear 5-year direction, and then at the end of that 12 months, if they haven't been able to deliver, they're not going to come back and say, well, look, all you've done is drip fed us and that's why we've fallen over. So my view is that it's better to give it one last hit and say, okay, before you get the money, we want the 5-year business plan. If we don't get that, then you don't get the increase to 30,000. So I just think it's better to do it that way and have an upper hand, if you like, or take the high ground, than it is to just let it run on and fall over. Because I can tell you from experience, if it falls over, it's going to cost you $150,000 a year, because the community won't wear not having access to that sort of facility given the capital investment that's been made so far. So I just think it's probably a wise investment at this point, and I'm prepared to wear that on behalf of the new council. So on that basis, I've got a recommendation on page 27, and I'm moving that, and it's so resolved. The number 14 is the pecuniary interest register, and the recommendation is on page 28, and I'm moving that it's so resolved. The rates and annual charges. Kate, there are some minor amendments. I think there's some transpositional things that we need to resolve. If you could explain those, and then I'll be moving I will be moving the items or the text from page 29 to page 47, subject to those small amendments. Kate?
Thank you, Mr. Administrator. Yes, that's correct. There were some transpositional errors on page 32 of the recommendation for domestic waste management charges. Items 2A, B and C list the waste management charges in the Cootamundra area as $368 per annual service. In fact, that was last year's fee, and the amount should be $379 per annual service, which is in accordance with the operational plan that's been on exhibition. And in addition, the same error affected items D and E, which were the domestic waste management unoccupied charge, which should be changed from $20 to $21. And there's one more change on page 38 of the recommendation. The sewer usage charge in the Cootamundra area has been listed as $2.70 per kilolitre. That's an error, and it's $2.40 per kilolitre in accordance with the operational plan.
So page 38, did you say?
Page 38, yep. Item 10A.
Okay, got you. Yep, 2.4.
Thank you.
Thank you. Right, subject to those changes, I move the text from page 29 to 47 as a resolution, and it's so resolved. sorry, that should have been to page 47 actually, not 45. Oh, sorry, that's what I said. Yeah, 47. Okay, the investment report is 16. I think that's where we're up to. Okay. The investment report has been tabled and the recommendations on page 47 be received and noted, and I move that and it's so resolved. Operations Division 17. On page 48, the council allocate 150,000 from the roads to recovery allocation to undertake the repairs with the correct spelling to the bridge on Three Ways Road, and I move that and it's so resolved. And then the final on the first agenda is on page 49, which relates to a proposed road closure for an unformed Crown Reserve road. The recommendation is moved and so resolved. We move now to the late items. The funding for kids who play sport. So I'm just going to... Yeah. So it's not me. Page 1 of 36 of the late items, which is the local members' address to Parliament in relation to the state budget, and really that's moved for noting. There are some issues in there that we'll be looking to address as time goes on. So it's moved and so resolved. The next one is the Inglis independent peer review, which I've already spoken to. Now, it's my intention to, in fact, move the recommendations. I've had a good look at them. I've had a bit of feedback from various members on the LRC and IAG, and I can see no reason to not endorse the recommendations. So I'm endorsing all of the recommendations in the report, and the second part of the recommendation or of the motion will be to delegate to the General Manager to develop a strategic action plan in order to facilitate the carrying out of those recommendations. So I'm moving that, and it's so resolved. I've just got, so that's the end of the items on the business paper, as I'm aware of. Have I got everything? The only thing that I want to do is to just ask a question of the General Manager that I'd like to focus on the Gundagai High School multi-purpose hall, and I'd ask the General Manager to investigate opportunities for long-term access to the Gundagai High School hall for after-school hours in community use. It just seems to me it's got quite a good facility, and I'd just like to see whether or not there are any opportunities to access that and into the future. No specific resolution on that, just a question for you to take up. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for your attendance. As always, I'll be available if people want to chat with me after the meeting, and I'll close the meeting at 1:04.